there guys, what's going on? A-Button Games here, back on Diablo 3, and with the release of the Anniversary Dungeon and kind of the throwback to Diablo 2, Diablo 1 days, they kind of gave me an idea, and now that Diablo 3's been out for a little while, I kind of want your guys' opinion as well. So basically what I want to do is I want to kind of go over all of the things that are like superiorly like different, not necessarily superiorly, but like superior and inferiorly different between, you know, Diablo. Let's do like Diablo 3 and Diablo 2, and I kind of want to get your guys' opinion as to which game you like better. Now, I'm not saying that one is certainly better than the other one. While Diablo 2 is always going to have like a special place and stuff like that because I think it kind of changed this style of game forever. I mean, Diablo 1, yes, but Diablo 2 really, like, the incremental, like, things that they did in Diablo 1 compared to other games were nowhere near, like, the leaps and bounds that they took with Diablo 2 from Diablo 1 and every other game of that type. So I think it's definitely worth, like, mentioning that Diablo 1 was a very special game too, but Diablo 2 really kind of took this category of games, whatever you want to call it, to, like, to the next level. So you know, the main thing that I think really was very off-putting to people when this game first came out, and still can be to more hardcore players, is the idea that there's no more really builds in this game. There are, but your builds are solely relied on your equipment, as opposed to spending skill points on the three or four main skills, depending on the class that you were back then. Stats, I mean, like attribute points. There's no more attribute points, so when you level up, you don't get attribute points. You don't get any of that crap. I'm sure that stuff just goes up at a set rate automatically, depending on the class that you are. And then skills. Every class has access to all of their skills, which is very different. It removes the idea of builds. It also removes the ability to completely fuck up your character, which could be good because it might be appealing to a more, I guess, less hardcore audience. Now, I do agree that that completely dumbed down the game, and Blizzard's been known to do that in recent with WoW and all the other games that they release. So, with the exception of probably StarCraft, that game's pretty awesome and still pretty difficult. It's as hard as you want to make it, but with this game, you know, you automatically gain all of your skills by the time you're max level. I guess that gives it a little bit more flexibility. It prevents people from getting bored with one character, like, ah, shit, I really want that build, so now I have to go make an entirely new character. Some of you guys might like that, some of you guys might not. So I think that what it does is it kind of opens this game to a less hardcore audience, and it can kind of get more people in the door. I personally think it worked out well for them because I don't think a lot of people have the time that they did when Diablo 2 was out to kind of dedicate that type of time to a game like Diablo 3. You know, when Diablo 2 was out, there wasn't a huge, you know, market for a million bajillion other games that are out now. Now this game is competing on console, and when you're competing on console, you're competing against all the other AAA releases that also come out on console. Back when Diablo 2 was out, really Blizzard was like the main thing that everyone had on their computer anyways. Everyone had StarCraft, probably World of Warcraft, and this game. You know, other people had their MMOs and stuff like that they like to play, but Diablo 2 was really like the dominant force. On console, Diablo 3 not even close. You know, it's competing with all the sports games, all the Call of Duties, Battlefields, Watchdog, Witcher, Final Fantasy. You know, it's so much competition that they know people don't have the hundreds of thousands of hours, hundreds upon thousands of hours to dedicate to this type of game, so I think it was probably a smarter move on them. I think personally that it hinders the game a little bit. It removes the whole build aspect of it. It kind of just basically forces you to get the gear that you want as opposed to kind of building your character incrementally over the course of the game. And that's kind of where I think that this game loses it a little bit. You know, you have the passive skills, which are a nice little addition and stuff, but one of the best things about Diablo 2 was, you know, when you first got to the bottom of that skill tree and the game had completely changed for you, you're like, oh my god, you know, you're building that Ice Orb Wizard, or everyone remembers the Ice Orb Wizard. You're building that Ice Orb Wizard. Once you finally got that Ice Orb, the entire game, like, opened up for you. You know, the things that you could do totally opened up. In this game, not as much. Yes, you know, you unlock this certain rune for your Arcane Orb at a certain level, so it's kind of like reaching the bottom of the skill tree, but it's different. It's different in the way that, like, you know, this game, you really don't get to see your character take shape until the very end game, until you're finally collecting all the legendary equipment that you need and or set equipment that you need. And I think that does take away a little bit from, you know, the aspect of building your character incrementally across the course of a game, as opposed to in this game, what most people do, what everyone does probably, is just rush as quickly as they can to max level, hop into a whole shit ton of rifts, and from there they just kind of collect the equipment that they know they want to go towards the skills that they want to use. And I think that really kind of makes the whole, the campaign and stuff like that, especially with the introduction of the adventure mode. You really never have to play through the campaign more than once if you don't want to. Once you get through all the stuff with the Reaper of the Souls and you unlock the Enchanter and all that stuff, you don't really ever have to worry about it again. So I think that kind of sucks. I'm sure a lot of you guys would agree with me on that. The other thing that's definitely a lot, so many things are completely different in this game, but the other thing that's completely different is the endgame content itself. Diablo 2 was more geared towards hardcore stuff like, go find this boss, go kill him a shit ton of times, hopefully you'll get, the key that they would drop, and to use the key to get to the uber bosses to find the torches, those types of things. This game, they have that with the key wardens, but not as difficult. You can always warp to where they are because they appear now on the maps. They always drop what they need to drop on higher torments, and that's all anyone plays on anyways. And the uber bosses are very underwhelming in this game compared to the old game. So, I do think that this game in general is a simplified Diablo 2. I think it does a lot of things right. I think that it uses its simplicity, and where it lacks in, complexity in terms of stuff like that, I think it gains in overall, mechanics and stuff like that. I think it's a much more fluid experience. I think that's a fair thing to say, that this game is much more fluid than Diablo 2. It's definitely more polished. But that could be, just because there's not as much going on per se as there was in Diablo 2. So I guess there's always that. And one of the main things that I really miss from Diablo 2 that I'm sure a lot of you guys miss is all the charms and stuff that you used to be able to have in your inventory. You guys all remember the Gauge charms and the torches and all the soulstone stuff that you could put in your inventory, and you would gain permanent stat bonuses from those just for having them in your inventory. That was really, really cool addition into the game. It really gave you kind of a sense of purpose late game to kind of look for. If you wanted to farm for certain items in that game, you would kind of need to get your Gauge charms. You kind of had to have perfect rolls on those in order to start farming, or else you'd be there all day. And I thought that kind of it spread out the content in the end game, as opposed to this game. Yes, you want to try to get the best rolls you can on your set gears, and you preferably want to try to get ancient, legendary versions of your stuff. But, after a week or so, you could have all the sets for one class if you really, really just hammer down and book through, a whole bunch of greater rifts, which, I guess you could take it or leave it. It depends on how you want to look at it. It makes things easier. It makes it so people don't feel like they have to spend hundreds of hours just for one character. They can kind of spread their time across multiple characters while still being able to build all their characters at once. So I guess that's good for them. But at the same time, the other huge difference with this game is the simplification of equipment. So while equipment effects can play on each other and make the game more complex, like this build right here that you guys are seeing in the background, my Exploding Palm Monk build is kind of complex in that you need a lot of different moving parts and a lot of different pieces to even make it worthwhile. The fact that legendary equipment and set gear in this game are kind of just that's what everyone has when they reach, max level is a little bit, it's definitely simplification. The old game, most people didn't get legendaries, unless you like I said, unless you were a hardcore player and you played a lot, you probably never saw a legendary in that game, with the exception of Gauge charm or the torches or something like that. But as far as the legendary weapons that gave stuff to all skills and things like that, most people wouldn't see that stuff unless they played a lot. And I thought that was always really cool because that kind of gave you a little something else to look forward to in that game, you know what I mean? You can make it as hard or simple as you wanted to. You could just get to level 65, 70, start your ball runs, stop at level 80 or 90, whatever the hell you want to stop at, and move on to your next character. This game, you always get to max level. That's just kind of the thing. That's obviously another key difference. You always get to max level. Diablo 2, not really. Most of us probably never got to max level. Some of us might have had a character 98, 99, maybe, but that was a lot of ball runs. So for those of you who know what I'm talking about, that was a lot of runs. So, bit of lag spike there. So I mean, You know, I don't know for sure if that's for better or for worse, that this game kind of gives you an end level that everyone kind of gets to. So everyone that you meet in this game that you play with are generally going to always be max level. You know, because now the end game scales as opposed to level, it's all torment. So I think that's kind of cool, but at the same way, again, it kind of simplifies it, because I feel like what they were thinking, I guess, when they geared this game up, was that most people, when they play, they want to have an end goal in mind. So they don't want to feel like they're wasting time and not getting anywhere, which I feel like sometimes you could feel that way with Diablo 2, like, oh, you can never reach max level, what the hell's the point? I mean, and in a way, okay, I sort of kind of get that, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, well, it kind of rewards the people who play more, and it doesn't reward the people who play less. This game, a little bit, but not nearly as much. Like, you could have really, really good gear on your guys. You could play on max torment on your guys. I mean, look at me. I'm only Paragon 434. I don't play nearly as much as I played Diablo 2, and I can already do just about all the endgame content in this really, really easily. I have no problem killing the uber bosses on max torment pretty much in one hit with this guy at this point. Especially with the updates that they made to the sets, I'll have to try that out. But so I mean, there's that. There's, you know, I feel like the simplification of the game probably works better in the current market, probably works better in the current state of video games in general. I don't think people have all the time that they used to you know, spend hundreds of hours, like I said before, on games. So I agree with that. I do miss a lot of stuff, though, from Diablo 2, so don't get me wrong. I personally, if I had to say which game I thought was better, I think Diablo 2 is hands down a better game. I feel like they left more for the imagination in that game. They left more for discovery in that game, you know, between the Herodra Cube. The runes, oh my god, the runes were awesome in that game. You know, you put a certain combination of runes in your equipment, and that's kind of how you got your additional, like, set bonus type things. There were sets in that game, obviously, but, you know, with the different combination of runes, you could really, oh shit, I wasn't paying any attention. I was taking a sip of coffee. With the combination of runes and sets in that game, you could really take your characters over the top, and I thought that was really cool, and I thought that was like a huge selling point to the game. And to this day, that's kind of the major selling point of that game, because, you know, I hopped on the other day, and that's like the main currency is runes. I mean, it's always kind of been runes, but now more so than ever. So I think that's really freaking cool. It shows that the game can really last, you know, last the test of time, and I think it's really a testament to the game that they put out back then, just the masterpiece. And, you know, this game is doing really well for itself, so I'm not taking anything away from Diablo 2 or Diablo 3 at all. You know, this game has been out for a little bit, and with all the huge releases that come out all the time, with all the huge releases that come out all the time for console and stuff like that, I think it's great that this game still has a pretty big player base, still pretty active player base, and, you know, enough players to kind of get shit done. And they're releasing, you know, incremental updates that improve this game. We'll see how it goes with the addition of the Necro once they decide they want to add that in. Their first expansion was definitely a success with the addition of the Crusader, although I don't think a lot of people use the Crusader as much as they'd probably like. I think that Lord of Destruction was probably, like, you know, a marquee, you know, a marquee kind of expansion in games in general. Like, it showed really what a company could do with an expansion. They completely overhauled that game, and they took it to completely new levels. And, you know, I don't know for sure if this expansion did the same thing. You know, it kind of introduced the idea of torments and all that stuff, but I think that's less to do with the update and more to do with the content they were lacking endgame. So I feel like that was always going to happen regardless of if they introduced the new class or not. So, you know, I feel like there's that. And of course, one of the other main things is you're seeing, I'm picking up legendaries left and right. That's obviously not a thing in Diablo 2. So, you know, you don't really just get that kind of stuff. And I feel like it gives the illusion that the game has more loot. It kind of is more, you know, people like, oh yeah, I can get legendaries, I can get stuff like that. So I feel like it kind of engages people a little bit better than Diablo 2 at times. But Again, at the same token, I feel like Diablo 2 was for just a different generation of players, guys. You know what I mean? More hardcore players back then, more people who had a lot more time to dedicate to games. So I think that that's kind of the main difference between the two games. Is what you're seeing is you're seeing a simplification, but you're seeing a simplification for the simple fact that, you know, people just don't have the kind of time that they used to have. And I think that that's okay. I don't think one game is vastly superior to the other game. I know a lot of you guys will probably disagree, say, oh, Diablo 2, you know, this game's a ripoff of... And in a way it is, but if, in the current state, you know what I mean, you guys have to take a step back and look, okay, would Diablo 2 do nearly as well if they, you know, released it now? If it had never been a game, if Diablo 3 was Diablo 2 and then Diablo 2 came out, you know, of course, graphically everything would be scaled according to chronologically, but, you know, I don't think it would. I don't think people have the time to dedicate. I think people get more frustrated. And I think overall this game has a bit more content in it in terms of overall variety of equipment and builds and stuff like that, just because for the simple fact that you don't have to make a new character if you want to try out a new build in Diablo 3. Diablo 2, you kind of did, you know, and if you spent a wrong skill point somewhere, you can kind of fuck yourself over. So I think that some changes were for better or for worse, guys. Definitely let me know what you guys think down in the comments, because I'm going to end this video here, guys. Just kind of wanted to go on a little rant, kind of give you guys something to think about, something to talk about down below in the content. You know, this game has a lot of additional stuff that Diablo 2 had, while Diablo 2 had a lot of stuff that this game doesn't have. For better or for worse, let me know what you guys think down below, and thanks so much for watching, guys, and until next time, see ya!